Is Mark even aware that they're using the same brand as his friend?
Beautiful.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to today's video, and today I'm going to be explaining Mark's entire electric fleet from start to today. And then, I want to say something real quick. Most of people hate Mark, and it's just because they barely own any electrical locomotives, which I'll explain why they don't own any electrical motives in the later the video. Also, if I sound weird, it's because I just woke up, so I might have like typos or say stuff wrong because I can't really talk right. But let's get into it. This story starts off with Amtrak. Amtrak is the main thing how Mark got into electrical locomotives. Amtrak was looking for a need in some electrical locomotives, and they were testing like the E60s, the GG1s, the French locomotives, but none of them was working. They kept on changing their design. Then they eventually got close to making an AM7, but then eventually in 1970 something, Amtrak finally created the AM7, #the toaster. Then, a couple years later, SEPTA ordered a couple of them, but then 1 year prior, in 1988, is when Mark ordered its 4 AM7s. AM7s number 4900, 4901, 4902, and 4903. Mark had been originally using F7s, whatever the one's called with the headlights, because there was an F7 that had bottom ditch lights as well. I think they were in the process of making more diesel locomotives at the time. Mark was in the beginning of a commuter rail in the 1980s. It was basically created by then. Before it was the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Back then, Mark was helped by CSX and chassis system to supply their trains, as CSX would help pull their trains sometimes, and so would chassis system. Ex-Burlington units would also be turned into F7s and used for Mark's diesel trains at the time. Since the AM7s came in, Mark created the GP40 WH2, and then 6 years later, they created the GP39. A couple years after that, they made the MP36, and then eventually after that, they made the HHP8, which is an electric locomotive, which we will explain in a minute. Amtrak had still needed more with than the AM7. They still wanted more electric, so that's when they landed on the HHP8. Basically an AM7, but more of a steam line design. It was created within the 1990s, and then in 2001, Mark started ordering their 6 HHP8s. 4910, 4911, 4912, 4913, 4914, and 4915. Around 2014 to 2017, Amtrak retired the AM7s and the HHP8s, and Mark retired the AM7s, leaving Mark as the only HHP8 operator. Within 2018 to 2020, Mark's HHP8s kept on breaking down, and some of the electric bolts literally erupted, so they were taken out of service for a little bit and repaired. Back around 2022, 2021, or 2023, they were put back in service and started running. They were left as the only HHP8s remaining that are electrical. But the reason I said electrical is that Amtrak is currently in the process of turning their 16 or 15 or 14 remaining HHP8s into cab cars for their Keystone and Northeast Regional 121. The reason Amtrak retired the HHP8s is because they were kept on breaking down and couldn't deal with fixing them because they were also 10 to 15 years old. And the reason the AM7s were retired for Amtrak is because they were 40 years old at the time and needed to be replaced. In 2018, SEPTA retired their AM7s and replaced them with something new. So did Amtrak for their HHP8s and AM7s. Within 2010 to 2013, Amtrak was in the process of making the ACS-64, which would go on nearly every electric thing they owned that could run on the Northeast Regionals, the Keystone, the Pennsylvania, the Night Owl Northeast Regional, the Silver Meteor, the Silver Star, you name it, the Vermonter, the Palmetto, the Carolinian. The anything you can think of, it's on there probably, except for the long distance trains, which from a stretch from I would say Washington to Boston, it's a pretty long stretch, but they're fast and they'll get you there in time. And around 2015, SEPTA had ordered their ACS-64s to run on their whatever it's called trains, but it's not the it was like, I'm not really big of a SEPTA fan, so I don't know what they run, but it runs on certain trains with coaches and not, the light rail looking things. But anyway, since then, every rail fan in existence have been making slanders and memes about Marc getting ACS 64, including myself. I kind of want to see it happen anyway. But the thing is, people don't know, they have ACS 64s by Amtrak. They took like a couple of Amtrak's ACS 64s and are currently running on some of their Penn line on some of their weekday rush hour trains. You can find them usually on trains. The only time I've only seen 2 ACS 64s on Marc trains. They were both on Marc train 443, which runs around like 5 p.m. And that's how you can find one. What are they planning to do with it? I don't know, because they've just been running on it for a couple of years now. And they haven't really changed the scheme. But the thing is, also with the AM7s for Amtrak, they would also run on Marc sometimes. Here's a clip. And now here's my clip of an Amtrak ACS 64 on a Marc train, not leading, by the way. My personal theory is what Marc is trying to do is they're probably saving up money, and then eventually they're going to put their theme on those ACS 64s and run them on their weekday trains and weekend trains. Anyway, that's all the electrical locomotive Marc I have to explain, but there is one more locomotive that I missed, which isn't an electric, but it is like an electric #diesel locomotive. It's the SC44, and it was built to replace the AEM7s. Anyway, people have attempted to actually Photoshop Marc ACS 64s, yeah. Anyway, if you like my Marc-based content, like Marc train stuff, in a couple days I'm going back to Maryland and I'm going to be filming Marc trains, so stay tuned for that in a couple days. The video will be out. I'll be rail fanning a couple times a day. So, yeah, until then, see ya.